we've got 74 convicted terrorists who've served very short prison sentences who are back on our streets. We have 400 people who went to fight for ISIS in Syria, and goodness knows the extent to which they've been brutalised and radicalised, and they're walking freely on our streets. And if the first duty of government is to protect its citizens, then something is going wrong here. So it's all well and good to be charitable, all well and good to say, well, once people have left prison, we must monitor them properly. You can't monitor people 24 hours a day, and the public deserve to be protected.
Do we not need to pause in the wake of what's happened to work out exactly what went wrong? Whether this was an issue about, I mean, it's clearly an issue about monitoring, but why he wasn't being monitored properly, and fix that problem before we discuss sentencing.
Look, we're not dealing with an ordinary criminal here. We're not dealing with somebody who may well repent and go back to living a normal life. We are dealing with people who have got the jihadi virus. We're dealing with people who want to destroy our civilization and kill as many of us as possible. It's a new phenomenon. We've not faced this kind of thing before. And I do not see that anybody should be released from prison unless we're absolutely convinced they've changed their ideology.
There's a particular issue as well, isn't there, Nigel Farage, that our prison system is creaking at the seams. Everybody knows this. The probation system is collapsing. That we have far fewer prison officers, probation officers. This has all been happening on the Conservative watch since 2010. 20,000 police removed from the streets in that time as well. You put it all together, and this is a cocktail for total disaster. Then you add the jihadi aspect to that cocktail, and you get what happened on Friday. And it's a collective malaise that has been happening. And, I watched Boris Johnson yesterday trying to blame all this on Labour and then trying to say, well, I've only been Prime Minister, over 100-odd days, or whatever it may be. But the reality is this has been happening since 2010 in a very serious and detrimental manner.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think whether Labour or the Conservatives are in power, the fact is the Liberal elite have run our criminal justice system for a very long time. We're seeing the results of it. I think generally within the country, law and order is deteriorating to the extent where now most crimes that affect us don't even get reported. We've almost given up on it. So if we have to build more prisons, Piers, frankly, so be it. And
in terms of somebody like Usman Khan, I cannot get my head around the fact he was released after 8 years. I thought I remembered that when you were convicted of terrorism, you got life, and you only ever came out if you were able to convince the parole board you were completely safe. That's all gone out the window. 8 years is not even, a tenth of most people's lives.
Yes, I mean, you're absolutely right. And of course, the other aspect of this is that radicalisation is happening in prisons more than anywhere else in our country that we can identify. So even the time people are in prison, there is no evidence they're actually getting rid of what I call this virus. And Theresa May, of course, was Home Secretary for much of this time and must bear some of this responsibility.
Let's just turn briefly to the election. I mean, it was a sort of fairly farcical debate last night, a leaders' debate without the two main leaders. Seemed to me sort of vaguely pointless. It got quite lively in parts. But I guess the big question for you is this. We're now 10 days away from the election. And we had you on a couple of weeks ago when you were making that decision about how many seats you were going to contest with your Brexit party. There's a lot of pressure coming your way now, isn't there, about these marginal seats where if a Brexit candidate, a party candidate stands, it may mean that the Conservative Party candidate doesn't win, and that could trigger a Labour victory through the back door. You must be concerned about that. What can you do about it?
Well, I'm concerned that Boris Johnson isn't good enough to beat Jeremy Corbyn, if that's what the argument is. I would have thought Boris Johnson's on course to win anyway. However, there are seats in this country, 130 of them, that the Labour Party have never won. and the Labour Party will never win, and where the Brexit Party is, in many of them, the challenger. So if we're going to be grown up, why didn't the Conservative Party do what I did and put country before party in order to get Brexit? They could have stood aside in some of those seats, and they chose not to, Piers, so we are where we are.
How are you going to feel, Nigel Farage, if the day after the election, Labour win by 10 seats, and all 10 seats are places where Brexit Party throws out the Conservative candidate, and you, with great irony, end up being the person that may have stopped Brexit happening? You can't surely want that eventuality.
Well, the numbers don't. The numbers don't work that way, because many of our voters would never vote Conservative in 1,000 years. They wouldn't vote Conservative if you paid them. The truth of it is, if the Conservatives do not win this election, they have themselves to blame. They put their narrow, selfish, greedy interest in their own party above the interests of the country. I propose...
Except they are the only party... But they're the only... Nigel, they are the only party at this election offering Brexit.
Yeah.
You know, the Labour Party are pretty transparent now.
Well,
they talk about a second referendum. They don't want a second referendum. They just want to stop it happening. Liberal Democrats absolutely don't want it to happen. So actually, Boris Johnson and his party, even if you have to hold your nose, is the most likely way you're going to get any form of Brexit. You must accept that.
I put forward a proposal at the end of August, and I campaigned for it for several weeks, to put together a Leave alliance, all right? That Leave alliance would have won this general election with a big majority, very comfortably, very easily. But the sheer arrogance of those that work in Number 10 said, no, we don't need anybody else, we can win this on our own.
But Nigel Farage, you stood down Brexit Party candidates in safe Tory seats, but the issue is not those seats. So is your priority simply sort of maintaining your pride and continuing to put Brexit Party candidates in these marginal seats because the Conservatives wouldn't play ball with you, or is your priority to get Brexit done?
My priority is the same as it's been, Susanna, for 25 years, and that is to get a Brexit. That is to leave the institutions of the European Union, not, if Boris sticks to his deal, you know, he promised he'd go further, but I wasn't convinced last night with Rishi Sunak on the panel that it's actually working. I want us to leave the institutions of the European Union. Boris's deal does not do that. It is Brexit in name only. It's almost worse, in the opinion of many, than staying a member of the Union.
You've changed your view on that.
Why, if that's the case, why did you ask any of your candidates to step down then? Why would you not resist in every place you could? Because Boris Johnson said he would go further than his deal. His deal that was presented to Parliament, I would fight against that every day of the week. He said he would go further than that, and that the next stage of this would be campaigning for a genuine free trade agreement. When I 3 times asked Rishi Sunak, his representative last night on the panel, whether that was the case, he did not give me an answer. So we need a bit more clarity from Boris Johnson. Is it the oven-ready package of a deal that is Brexit in name only, or is he going to keep the promise he made us to go simply for a free trade agreement and leave the institutions of the European Union? And I think, frankly, at the moment, the Conservative campaign is very confused. OK, Nigel Farage, we appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much indeed.